Hi, my name is Catherine Hunter. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and certified addictions counselor and perinatal mental health clinician at Catherine Hunter and Associates. I want to welcome you to my very first vlog. During this time of quarantine, a lot of our clients are calling in and are very distressed about the changes that are going on in their life. I've attached to this vlog a video of tree cutters cutting down pear trees in our backyard, a form of a pear tree in our neighbor's backyard, and several tree limbs in another neighbor's backyard. And it occurred to me while they were pruning and cutting and chopping and taking away limbs, how very much our lives feel like that at this time. We're being told by government officials to stay home and quarantine, and many of our social supports are being cut off. We are struggling as a nation to stay positive and adjust to this coronavirus that is very lethal and very unknown. And often in times of our lives when we go through losses or we go through adjustments, they're not as immediate or sudden as this latest COVID-19 quarantine that happened about 40 days ago. So in the next few minutes, I wanted to share with you some ideas about how to cope during this time when you feel that so many beautiful and necessary things and people are being removed from your immediate grip. As I saw the tree limbs being cut away by a hacksaw or sawed off by a pruning implement, and then I saw them wrapping up the twigs and barreling them up to put in the tree shredder, I thought there are many of our clients, our precious clients, that are feeling hacked to death. And this is a time when we need to learn and have a different perspective about what's going on in order to survive. So back in the day, in 1987, when I was doing my first interviews for a job, a typical question is, Catherine, what form of therapy or foundation do you utilize in your work? And honestly, at the age of 23, I had no clue. So the code answer was, I integrate many disciplines. I integrate family systems theory, I integrate cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm very into brief solution-focused therapy. And for those of you who are therapists out there, you understand what that means. But for clientele, what that means is there's different disciplines that a therapist can use to draw her theory and her intervention strategies with her clients. And during this time of COVID-19, many clinicians are using therapy disciplines from cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical therapy, emotions-focused therapy, and brief change. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about each one. Let's start with cognitive behavioral therapy. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, one of the main focuses is taking a look at a client's thinking, recognizing the exact words that they're saying to themselves, and then encouraging them to use different words. Our bodies and our minds do not know the difference between an exaggeration, a dramatic emotional reaction, and the truth. If we say to ourselves, I'm gonna die if this happens to me, our bodies really respond like we're gonna die. It's not just an exasperation or a statement that is an expletive or an exaggeration. It's truly a directive to our emotional well-being. And a part of our heart, a part of our attitude, a part of our motivation actually dies or reduces when we say things like that to ourselves. For example, I am working with a woman who, as a child, lived with a mother during junior high and high school who was agoraphobic. And what that means is that she was so fear-based driven that she didn't leave her house. She had gotten herself to a state of emotional emotional arousal that she believed that leaving her house was ultimately dangerous, and the only way that she could stay safe was staying in her house. So while I'm working with her daughter, who's now in her mid-50s, she's regressing back to that time in her life when she was literally exampled by her mother that the safest thing to do when you're afraid is to hunker down, stay home, and never leave your house. Now, for immediate short-term, that works. But for long-term, obviously that doesn't work, because as an adult, you need to be able to go get your groceries, fill up your gas, go to work, have relationships, and function. But what she's telling to herself at this moment is, if I leave the house, dangerous, bad things are going to happen to me and I'm going to catch the virus. So a cognitive behavioral approach would say, let's look at what you're saying to yourself. If I leave the house, I'm going to catch the virus, and change that self-talk statement to something constructive rather than destructive. So cognitive behavioral therapy is all about changing what we say to ourselves and moving it into a statement or a declaration that serves us rather than takes away from us. So we spent her session the other day taking statement by statement and moving it into something that was constructive. So instead of saying, if I leave the house, I'm going to catch the COVID virus, instead she said, it's necessary for me to leave the house, and I can take certain precautions to help make me feel as safe as possible. I need to leave the house. I need to get my groceries. I need to eat. So that's what we do. We change her self-talk. We become more aware of her self-talk, and then we move it into something constructive. And I also taught her this, and it's like a math equation. Event plus interpretation of event equals emotional response. Event plus interpretation of event equals emotional response. So, for example, if we use that same statement, if I leave the house, I'm going to catch the virus, the interpretation of that event, or that emotional, the interpretation of that event is fear, and the equation of that event is paralyzation and anxiety. So, event is I have to go to the grocery store. Interpretation of the event is anxiety or fear. Emotional response to that is frozen, paralyzation, fear. Okay, so you can see that by thinking that way, she begins feeling anxious, which yields to paralyzation and fear or panic. So what we did instead is we deconstructed that equation, and we decided to intentionally add a constructive interpretation of that event, which looked like this. Event being I have to go to the grocery store. Interpretation of that event is I'm feeling some anxiety, but I can take some precautions to help me feel safe. And that equaled, I'll have some anxiety, but I'll do the best I can to safeguard myself. So the belief system then was, I can do this. I can go to the grocery store with taking some precautions, and even though I'll be a little afraid, I can still do this. I won't be paralyzed. So those are some ideas. I hope this little vlog was helpful for you. I encourage you today to take a look at how you are going to think today. Catch your thought process as you're going, and flip it into some constructive self-talk so that you can reduce your emotions and then go into a positive emotion that's manageable and can help you manage your day. Have a good day.